Tarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tatsat. So Hare Krishna everybody. So before we begin the Bhagavad Gita, it's not normally we recite this prayer Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 3 times, invoking the blessings of Srimad Bhagavad Gita itself. So let's say it together 3 times. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. Okay. So again, before we begin the Bhagavad Gita also, it's customary that we offer some verses in glorification of the Bhagavad Gita. So one of the ways to do this is to recite notable prayers by important personalities or acharyas. So this is from the Gita Mahatmya by Sripad Sankaracharya, and this is the second verse. Yesterday we recited the first verse. So I will say the Sanskrit. Gitya dhyayana shilasya pranayama parasya cha naiva shanti hi papani purva janma kritani cha. Translation: if one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. So this is a very notable verse because we are going to talk about some of these things here. So here it says that the reactions of his past misdeeds, that means our previous karma. So we're not going to go deep into karma, but we are going to speak about something which gives the basis of the of how the law of karma acts on. Okay. So let's do a bit of recap first, what we've discussed yesterday, right? So we began with chapter 1 and are observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So that's the English title. Sanskrit, it's called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, how Arjuna was put into illusion. So we began with how Dhritarashtra was very anxious. He wanted to know what's the outcome. He asked his secretary, Sanjaya, right? And then we also discussed signs of victory. What would be the obvious signs of victory? If you remember some of these, right? The most important one is Krishna or Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune, is on the other side, is on the side of the Pandavas. So that is the main sign of victory. And then there was also the Dharma Kshetre. The first verse itself talked about Dharma Kshetre, holy place of pilgrimage. The war is taking place in a holy place. So that's another sign of victory. And thirdly, the chariot of Arjuna given to him by Agni Dev. So that is another important point on the victory aspect. And on top of that, there is also the flag. You can see here the picture. On top of the flag, there is a picture of Hanuman. So Kapidwaja, that means the monkey flag. So previously, during Ramachandra's reign, Hanuman led the armies of Lord Ramachandra to victory. So again, this is a sign of victory. And of course, the blowing of the conch shells, Divya Shankar. So this was another sign of victory. So then we discussed the viewing of the army, how the whole setting began, how the setting for the speaking of the Bhagavad Gita started. Arjuna asked Krishna, please bring me to the center so that I can see who are fighting with me. And then Krishna also brought and purposely put him right in front of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya. So, and then Arjuna, when he saw them, Krishna, together with that sentiment, he put Arjuna into illusion. When that happened, Arjuna became emotional and sentimental, and he completely forgot his real reasons and his conviction. And we discussed all this yesterday. So therefore, Arjuna Bishada, Arjuna put into illusion. So the Lord uses his pure devotees as instruments in, like, for example, like a drama. Now, the Pandavas are all eternal living entities, and they're all just like all of us, but they are special devotees of the Lord. They are always liberated. And the Lord uses these wonderful pure devotees in his different pastimes called Leelas. And in this way, he teaches us many, many instructions. So today, contents of the Gita summarized, chapter 2. So Srila Prabhupada, the author of Bhagavad Gita, the translator for the English version of the Bhagavad Gita, he gives this title because mainly chapter 2, it has around 72 verses. It's the second longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. The longest chapter would be the last chapter, chapter 18. But chapter 2 is also very long. And it's like a abstract. It includes all the important topics discussed throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And it's more like a preview. You know, like when we watch a movie, before we watch a movie, we want to know whether we want to watch the movie or not. So we like to see the preview, right? The trailer. So it will show, you know, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and then this kind of scene is going to come. So all this is like a preview, which is given in chapter 2 to arouse our interest, so that we will be interested to hear more and more as the chapters unfold in Bhagavad Gita. So let's see what we can. By the way, it's also called, in Sanskrit, chapter 2 is also called Sankhya Yoga. So what is Sankhya Yoga? Sankhya means the science. It's basically, Sankhya is the science. The literal translation means the science of counting, but it doesn't mean mathematics. It means, it can also be said, the science of understanding what is matter and what is spirit. The science of differentiation. This is Sankhya Yoga. To understand what is matter and what is spirit. So like that, and one by one, different aspects of the entire material creation. That is Sankhya. So let's see. Now, in previous chapter, we also talked about, after Arjuna was put into illusion, he gave various excuses. He started telling Krishna, you know, I don't think I should fight in this. This is so horrible. First he was very disturbed emotionally. Then he started saying, how can I fight? So he gave 5 reasons, right? So probably some of you could remember the 5 reasons, but I will just mention them. If you remember the acronym CESDI, CESDI, right? C stands for compassion. He became extremely compassionate. He thought, why do I need to kill all these people? He forgot the higher duty of dharma. He completely forgot about it. And then he was only focused on killing. So he thought, why want to do this? Let's be compassionate. And to justify further, he gave the second reason, E. E stands for enjoyment, or rather, no enjoyment. There is no point to this fighting. What's the point? I enjoy this kingdom when all these people are already dead. These people are my worshipable personalities. I respect them so much. So then he gave the third reason, and if I were to do this, to kill such worshipable, respectable personalities simply for the sake of getting the kingdom, he is thinking of getting the kingdom, but actually he forgot the higher reason why he's fighting. It's actually to establish dharma, not to really just get the kingdom. So then he said, if I do this, I will fall into sin. Sin will overcome us. So that's the third reason. CES, S for sin. And then he said, why sin will come? Not just simply because of killing, because due to this killing, so many horrible things will happen throughout the years. The family dynasty will collapse because there are no more elders to take care and protect the virtues of each family. Each tradition of each family will not be upheld because nobody is there already, all died. So then what happened? Unscrupulous people will take advantage. They will exploit the women and the children. And in this way, they will get the next generation of unwanted progeny. And in this way, the whole world will rush towards destruction. So that's Arjuna's argument. That is the fourth reason. CES, D for destruction of dynasty. And the last reason is given in here, chapter 2. So chapter 2, Krishna says, Arjuna will continue saying, no, before he starts speaking further, Krishna will intervene. He will tell Arjuna, hey Arjuna, hey Partha, why are you, this kind of words doesn't befit you. It is something not worthy of you speaking, right? And he completely rejects all these excuses Arjuna gives, right? He calls them Hridaya Daurbalyam. That means he's saying that all these excuses, all this you're saying is due to weakness of the heart. So Hridaya means heart and Daurbalya means weakness. It's due to your weakness of the heart that you're speaking in this way, in a way which is befitting someone who is not an Aryan. So here it's called An-Arya. An-Arya means not Arya. Arya means one who knows. So one who knows the goal of life, the higher purpose, that is called an Arya, right? So here Krishna is telling, you're speaking like an An-Arya. So it's not suitable. And then after that, Arjuna will say, but what do you want me to do, Krishna? How can I shoot with arrows and pierce these people who are worshipable of my respect? I should be garlanding these people, this Bhishma and Drona. I cannot shoot arrows and kill them. So in this way, he argued. And then after saying this, then he just felt completely confused. He thought, I know in one hand, Yudhishthira Maharaj is the rightful king. By right, this is the way it should happen. But then at the same time, who am I fighting with? These are my family members. So he became completely confused. So he came into indecision. So he says, I don't know what to do now. And then in the end, he says, better I just stay still and let these people kill me than for me to do this duty. So Arjuna spoke like that and he sat down. So like that, but the important point that we understand here is that Arjuna, he was a very special personality. Although he went through indecision, who did he have in front of him? He had Krishna, and he knew and he knows that Krishna only can solve my problem. So therefore, when he felt that there's nothing he could think to actually solve his situation, he was in extreme misery. So he didn't know who else to turn to, and then he just looked at Krishna directly and he said this very, very famous verse. It's a very beautiful verse, and it's a very famous verse also. This verse is a focal point or a turning point in this situation of the Bhagavad Gita. So let me just say this. You want to say it? Okay, say loudly.
Pahata Sabhava Precham Nitam Dharma Samodachetaha Yajtreyasham Nishchitan Ruhitan Me Shishyasteham Sadimam Tvam Prapannam.
Okay, so that's just my daughter. Anyway, so this is the beautiful verse. And what does it mean? Now, I am confused about my duty. So Arjuna admits this. So this is the first important point in getting knowledge. So chapter 1 basically highlights the divine or basically the saintly qualities of Arjuna. It contrasts the qualities of Duryodhana and the qualities of Arjuna. Duryodhana was only trying to get the kingdom. He didn't care who he was fighting. Whereas Arjuna, when he saw these people, he was compassionate. So compassion is very important as a saintly quality before we can understand spiritual knowledge. So that was one thing. Second important point is one has to understand one's position. So here Arjuna understands that I am now confused. He admits this. He doesn't justify, he doesn't argue, he doesn't take his false ego and then come and say, no, actually I know, but actually I don't know. So he admits. So this is the first thing. After all, there's a saying, right? To know one's disease is to know how to cure. It's like halfway to actually getting the cure, right? First, we need to diagnose correctly. So therefore, now I'm confused about my duty, he admits, and I have lost all composure. Why? Because of miserly weakness, Hridaya Daurbalyam. Just like how Krishna said. So when Krishna said it's Hridaya Daurbalyam, he also admits, yes, I feel this way. What can I do? So now he's saying, in this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. So Arjuna here is representing all of humanity when he's speaking like this to Krishna. So this is common also in our lives. If we reflect upon ourselves, very, very often we don't really know what is right for us to do and what is wrong for us to do. And in this way, we make many, many wrong decisions in our lives. And as life goes on, we just deal with it as it comes.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I'd like to request my sister Rajama Kumaran try to join, but can you accept her?
They should be able to join. They can just click the link. If one clicks the link, they should be able to join directly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now he says, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now, and in order for this to happen, Arjuna accepts Krishna as his guru. So that's another important point also. So in this kind of confusion, in this kind of situations, if we want to understand higher knowledge, it's important to accept a teacher. So even in material things, we accept teacher, isn't it? So this is much more difficult to understand spiritual knowledge. So therefore, definitely a teacher is important. So he says, now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So this is a famous verse. Why? Because this is the verse Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. So that's very, very important before one can understand further, right? Otherwise, if a student always thinks he knows better, then there will be arguments and all. So this is an important quality here. So then Krishna begins to instruct Arjuna all the way from verse 210 all throughout the entire chapters of the Bhagavad Gita to the last verse, chapter 18, 72. So what does Krishna say? Krishna begins by, first of all, addressing the excuse of compassion, because Arjuna brought the topic of compassion, right? I'm going to kill all these people. I'm going to destroy their bodies. What's going to happen? So Krishna will begin with Sankhya Yoga. Now, Sankhya Yoga is, as I mentioned earlier, the science of differentiating what is matter, what is spirit. So the first part of Sankhya Yoga is called Atma Tattva, or the science of the soul. So he wants to tell Arjuna, hey Arjuna, why are you talking like this? Don't you understand that you are the soul? So let's see how he speaks about it. But before we go into that, a bit of understanding on our part. Now, usually, a very important question which human beings ought to ask is, who am I? So, in fact, the scriptures say, if we don't understand certain questions, then our life is just like the life of an animal. Because what are the things the animals do? The animals do, they eat, they sleep, they mate, and they defend. So human beings do the same thing also. So in the end, at the end of the entire whatever that we do, we can say human beings are more sophisticated in what we do. We are more sophisticated in our eating, more sophisticated in our mating and our sleeping and our defending. But in the end, if this is the same activity that we are doing, then it's not the worth of human life. So a human being has higher intelligence, so he should inquire certain questions. And one of the important questions is, who am I? Now, when I say I, who do I mean I? When I point at myself and I say I, am I talking to this body here? So am I Shastri or Sudarshan Das, or am I a Indian, or am I a Malaysian, or am I a human being? So which I am I referring to? So that's an important question. So anyway, and what is the worth of this I? What is my worth? So anyway, there is the scientists try to answer this question. They say we are just matter. So there's one person, Dr. Harry Monson, professor of anatomy at Illinois College of Medicine. He did an experiment. This was one or two decades ago. He says that in a human body, most of the human body is made out of water. So in a 60-pound person, now there are about 5 pounds of calcium, 9 ounces of magnesium, 2 pounds of phosphorus, 6 ounces of sulfur and sodium each, and 1 ounce of other substances, trace substances, and plus water. So if you add the cost of all this, now this, he says, this is all human being is made out of. Human beings made out of these things. So if we go to a pharmacy and we can buy all these things, it will roughly come up to about $9. So that's about like 36 to 40 ringgit. So a human being is worth 40 ringgit. Is that what it means? So the scientists cannot go beyond. They cannot understand further beyond that. But over the years, insurance companies and all that, they came up with a value for human life. Now, this value, from what I checked last time, in the US, a human life's value is about 200,000 US dollar. Why I'm saying this is because when disasters happen, the compensation that companies usually give to victims of disasters, like the bridge collapses or something like that, the government will give, it's about 200,000 per person. So is that really the value? So it's much better than $9, but still, is that really the value? So now we see this car. Now, when a car crashes, right, who do we worry about first? Do we worry about the car's value? Oh my goodness, my car, so expensive, 500,000, more expensive than the 200,000. But no, most people will be concerned about the person inside, isn't it? So the person is much more valuable. Another example is when someone dies, we say he has passed away, right? We go to funeral, oh, he's gone, he's gone. But then we say, what do you mean he's gone? He's still there. Because the person dies, but the body is still there. The same Mr. Jones, let's say we call this fellow Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones died, but the body is still there. If someone takes a photograph of him there, he's there lying on the bed, but he's dead. So who is dead then? Who has passed away? Because the same body is there. So what's the difference? The body is still there. So it is actually the soul which we are talking about, right? Nobody wants to associate with the dead body, isn't it? When the body is alive, when the body is with the soul, everybody wants to enjoy the body. We want to hug the person. We want to have all kinds of relationships. But when the body is dead, right, and the soul is gone, what do? It's untouchable, practically speaking, right? It starts to decompose. So nobody wants to associate. In fact, they bury it away or they burn it away. So this is what happens. So that means there is something different compared to the body, that we are the soul. Okay, let's see what Bhagavad Gita says. So therefore, when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, Krishna begins by first telling Asochan Anvasochastvam Prajnavadamscha Bhasase Gatasunagatascha Nanusuchanti Panditaha. He tells Arjuna, you are speaking so nicely, so many learned words you have spoken. You know, you gave excuses of compassion, you gave excuses of destruction of family dynasty and all these things. In fact, you're speaking like a pandit, but you are mourning, you are now crying and lamenting for something which no Aryan would lament for, right? One who knows the higher goal will not be crying over this. They will understand what is right. So what is the value of all your learning? So first Krishna will slightly chastise Arjuna, and then he will begin his instructions. So one of the first few instructions he begins is this beautiful verse, which is another very famous verse, right? Want to say?
Yeah.
Say loudly.
Dehinosmin yata dehe kamaram yavanam jara tata dehantara prapte dhirastatra namuhyati.
The translation is like this. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. So therefore, a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So this is a very interesting verse because it actually creates a new concept in the mind. So we can see this picture here. So this light here, which is like a line passing through. So when we are young, in a baby body, the same soul is in that baby body. So what happens? The body changes, right? From the baby, it becomes a toddler. From a toddler, it becomes a young boy. Then it becomes an older boy, a teenager, then a young man, adult man, and then an older man, and then much older, and then slowly the person dies, and then finish. What happens? So the body changed. The body changed throughout this transformation, but the soul didn't change. We are still the same persons, right? 20 years ago, can we say we were I'm a different soul 20 years ago? I'm the same. I know me, right? So we may have different likes and dislikes, but individuality is the same, right? It's not like somebody suddenly came into my body and I'm now a different person. It's not like that. So the soul remains throughout the body's transformation. And then this verse says that death is also another transformation. Just like how from the baby to boy to young man to old age and all that. So when person dies, that is also a transformation. So what happens to the soul then? The soul leaves that body. That's the ultimate transformation. The soul leaves the body and it goes into another body at death. So this is a very important point. So a sober person, a dhira, right, one who knows, is not bewildered by such a change. So this is what Krishna tells. So a bit more Krishna explains to help us to understand further. Vasamsi jirnyani yata vihaya navani grihnati naro aparani tatha sarirani vihaya jirnyani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So when the soul makes the transformation at the time of death, it is the example given here. It's like how we change clothes. Now, when we wake up in the morning, we wear fresh new clothes. So this is like a fresh body. The soul has got a fresh body, a baby body. So as we are working throughout, the body gets, the clothes get dirtier and dirtier and dirtier until it becomes very dirty. And then we feel like, I don't want this body anymore. Or let's say I really need to change this clothes. So then we change into another clothes. So similarly, Krishna himself is saying this, that just like we put on new garments, giving up the old, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies. giving up old and useless ones. So in other words, he's trying to tell Arjuna, you don't have to worry. You see, Drona, Bhishma and all, they have been here for many years. So when you attack, when you kill them, they will die, but they will take another birth. You're not destroying the individuality of these people. You are simply you are simply killing them. Of course, why kill them in the first place? Why kill them is because they have supported adharma. And one of the higher, there are different levels of 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 knowledge. So it said that higher than the Artha Shastras, or knowledge about economics, or knowledge about morality, is Dharma Shastra, knowledge about virtue. So even higher than Dharma Shastra is knowledge about soul, Atma. So therefore, in the course of one's duty to maintain virtue or dharma in this world, one should not hesitate. After all, you are a warrior, you are a Kshatriya. Your purpose as a Kshatriya, a warrior as a Kshatriya, purpose is to defend dharma. You cannot allow people to destroy dharma, or to cause dharma to be fallen. Otherwise, what will happen to everybody? What will happen to the world, right? So that's the reason Krishna says, he's now telling Arjuna Atma Tattva to counter the argument of compassion. So, a bit more on this point. So what we have understood from here, Krishna is actually giving the point about reincarnation. He's talking about how soul transmigrates from body to different body. So this is not something which is very new, actually. Even the Western countries, even people from the Western side have actually understood that these kind of phenomena has happened. So there are many, many books. These are some of the books which talks about reincarnation. And it's not just by any normal people. It's actually by real scientific people and doctors and professors who have made a study. And one of these person here, this is Ian Stevenson, Carlson professor. He's not an ordinary professor. He sits on the chair of the Carlson, and he's the professor of psychiatry at the University of Virginia. And he has actually extensively investigated over 2,000 cases using rigorous scientific methods. And he has published this book. Of course, he had published papers and all that. But, the scientific community is such that mainstream science doesn't accept these things. So even though it's presented in their way, the most they will say is because they don't recognize the existence of soul in science. They know that there's something, but because it cannot be defined, they don't want to accept that it's so. But definitely there are many, many incidences of reincarnation. Children who remember previous lives. So many, many cases. That this is another book by the same author. So like that, there are many, many. This is another author, Brian L. Weiss, MD, another doctor. And in this way, it's not just reincarnation. There are also near-death experiences. There is also out-of-body experiences, right? So these are all documented. More than 100 books are there in the market. And there is one story which was, it came in the papers many years ago. This is a story about Manju. And she was 2 years old. This is a child, when she was 2 years old, she claimed to be a reincarnation of not Krishna, the Supreme Lord, a reincarnation of her previous life. She was a boy called Krishna. So she claimed at 2 years old. Now we might think, people might sometimes forge stories. They may give false things just to get publicity or just to get money or something like that. But this is a 2-year-old girl, and she was actually thoroughly investigated by several people. And there were documentaries about her also. So she narrated when she was 2 years old how she had drowned in the village well. And then she actually brought her current family to meet her old previous family. So now this is a picture of her current mother on the right and her old mother, the previous life's mother. So she spends times with both of them. And she's able to relate with both mothers perfectly. She's like, she was able to tell incidences in her past life. So this is one example. Here's another one. This is collected by Dr. Brian Weiss of the Sinai Medical Research Center in the US. He talked about a 3-year-old boy, Mahinder, so the one in the blue shirt. So it seems that this boy, when he was 3 years old, he remembers himself as Ogat Ram in his previous life, who was killed in an accident. And then he actually brought his family. He traveled to Ogat's village and took sweets for his 3 children. So this was the 3 children, 1, 2, and 3, his children in his previous life. So it was very interesting also. Like that, there are many. So here's another person, Dr. Colin Watson. He says, the sheer volume of evidence for survival after death is so immense that to ignore it is like standing at the foot of Mount Everest and insisting that you cannot see the mountain. So that's unfortunately the sad state of mainstream science. They just close their eyes, the phrase eyes wide shut. So they don't want to see it. So it is there, many incidences like this. In fact, there was another one I know. This is in the US. Actually, there was this lady. This is a study of phobia. This lady, she had very bad phobia about crowded places. I forgot the scientific term for that. Claustrophobia, yeah, claustrophobia. So she doesn't like closed places. If the door of the room is closed, she feels very uncomfortable. So in lifts and all that, very uncomfortable. So sometimes she even faints. So because of this, she actually went to see a psychiatrist, a medical psychiatrist. And this medical psychiatrist she tried different ways. And eventually they tried what we call hypnotism. They put the person to sleep in a hypnotic manner. And then it's called hypnotic regression. And when the person is put to hypnotic regression, they ask this woman, who are you? What do you see? So the woman, she started saying different things. She said, I'm a baker in a French bakery. And then after that, she said, I am actually a person in a warrior, what do you call, a soldier in the French Revolution. And then like that, then she went. And in one of the regressions, she said, I see darkness everywhere. I saw darkness everywhere. And then the psychiatrist thought, oh, okay, this sounds close to the claustrophobia. Let's investigate this further. So can you explain more? Then she said, I see darkness everywhere. And then I'm extremely agonized. And she starts crying and crying and crying. So, and she faints. So like that, they again put her into regression. And they did this several times. And then again, she went back to that same memory. She said that I am an Egyptian princess, not princess, priest, female priest. And she said that I was living in an era where there was a lot of nice, everything was going on well in my city. This was several centuries ago. And she didn't say which century, but from the way she spoke, people could understand which century it was. And then she said there was a plague which happened at that time, something like what we are going through now, like a pandemic, COVID. So a plague occurred. Everybody was dying of this disease. So because there was no cure, those who got this disease, they were being put somewhere far away. And then she didn't know what was happening to those people. Then one day she got the disease, she and her friends, priestess. So then what happened, she was brought together with the priestesses, and they were all put inside a mountain cave, and they were sealed alive. The cave was fully sealed alive while they were all alive. And while she actually remembers seeing the cave door closing, and the light was going until pitch darkness happened, and she remembered screaming. So this was her memory. And because of this memory, she has this fear of closed spaces in this life. So you see how karma works. It comes in different lifetimes. So we will talk about this all in later classes in more detail. So this is just an indication. So anyway, let's go back to the Bhagavad Gita. So basically, this is to highlight that we are the soul and we are not this body. This body, I'm born human, I'm born Indian, I'm born whatever Malaysian, or whatever occupation that we may have. All this is actually just with the body. Whatever titles we may have, or whatever education that we may have, whatever wealth that we may have, all ends at the time of death, right? So then Krishna goes on to say, the soul is an individual. What is the proof of that? This verse. Natu evaham jatu nasam natva neme janadipaha. Okay. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you. So Krishna is telling, never was there a time that you or I or all these kings who have come to fight here, all these people, in other words, every living entity, never was there a time that we did not exist. So what does that mean? It means that we are eternal. But the second line is even more important. It says that, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So in the future also, we will continue to exist. And it doesn't say that we will all join together into one, right? Because if we be joined together into one, then we lose our identity. So therefore, the soul is, not only the soul is eternal, the soul is individual, and the soul goes on. It doesn't end. It's always living. So that is a very important point here. Because there are some people who come and say that in the end, everything merges into one soul. So that is not actually supported by the Bhagavad Gita. Later we will see there are many other verses like this to give the same conclusion. So then what else Krishna says? Now Krishna, in actually there is one place, there is one Upanishad, which is one of the Vedic scriptures. So in the Mundaka Upanishad, it gives further detail of where the soul is. So it said that the soul is in the region of the heart. So it's like sitting, this is for human beings and generally for higher life forms. So it is within the region of the heart. Now it doesn't mean that it's in the heart, because the soul is in a different dimension. The heart is made of matter, right? It's gross. Whereas the soul is subtle, it's spirit. So it doesn't mix, but it's somewhere within that region. So it doesn't mean that we have a heart transplant, we have a different soul. No, it's not like that. Because the heart may be removed, but the soul still remains within the region where the heart was, right? So this is the understanding. And on top of that, he says that this the Shvetasvatara Upanishad gives further information about the soul. It says the soul, if you take the upper point of a hair, like if you take one piece of your hair, the upper point, just the tip of the hair, and if you divide this into 100 parts, and that one part which you take out, again you divide into another 100 parts, that means about 100,000 magnification, right? What will we get? Then the Shvetasvatara Upanishad says that is roughly the size of the soul. It's very small. Therefore, the Vedas say the soul is Anu. Anu means very small. Whereas the Supreme Lord is Vibhu. Vibhu means very big. But it has the same quality. So we will talk about that later on in later chapters. Okay. So here, as I told you, right, chapter 2 is like a preview. It gives hints so that all these points will be further discussed in later chapters. And then Krishna also says, soul is indestructible, cannot be killed. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayanti apo, na shoshayati marutaha. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. So what does that mean? It means that the soul is beyond the Panchabhutas. What's the Panchabhuta? Panchabhuta means earth, water, fire, air, and ether, right? So this is beyond this earth, water, fire, air, ether cannot even touch the soul. So it is beyond this. Therefore, it is called spirit. It is not matter. So then Krishna says, the soul is eternal. And this is the verse. We had another verse before that, right? Talking about the soul is eternal. So like that, there are many verses. I'm just putting a few selections here. Na jayate mriyate va kadachinnayam bhutva bhavitava na bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvato ayam purano na hanyate hanyamane sarire. Na jayate. Never was there, for the soul, there is never birth nor death. Nor having once been, does he ever cease to be. So this was already mentioned previously. And then further Krishna says, he is unborn, ajo. Ajo means without birth. That means he's already always there, eternal. This is not a topic about the chicken or the egg. Both the chicken and the egg were there, like that. This is the understanding. So ajo, he is unborn. Therefore, both God and us were always there. We were never, therefore this is ajo. The word ajo is used. Ajo nitya. Nitya means always. Always we were there. Right? Ever existing. Shashvato. Ayam Purano, the oldest and primeval. Ayam Purano means the oldest. He is not slain when the body is slain. So what happens to the soul when the body dies? The soul is impervious. It's not affected. This is the purport of that verse. Here is another important point also about the soul. So we are learning about the soul here. The soul is inconceivable. Now that's the reason scientists cannot understand the soul, because it cannot be conceived. It cannot be measured. It cannot be discovered by any method that we have within us. The soul is inconceivable. The Sanskrit term for this is achintya, right? So it comes here. Avaktyo yam achintyo ayam, right? Achintya means inconceivable. It is said that the soul is invisible, avyakto, invisible, inconceivable. That means cannot be discovered, and immutable. Immutable means it doesn't change. It remains the same. The body may change. The body may change, right? So sometimes, people say, oh, he's an old soul. Actually, there's no such thing. We are all old souls. It's just that our consciousness, the development of our consciousness is what differentiates our maturity, right? So, and the soul is immutable. It doesn't change. We may change different types of body, but the soul always remains the same. So knowing this, you should not grieve for the body, Krishna tells Arjuna. And here's another one. Soul is unchangeable. Again, I mentioned the point just now. Here's another verse which further establishes the point. This individual soul is unbreakable, is insoluble. If it's unbreakable, that means we cannot become fragments. It's not like one soul becomes two soul, one soul breaks into five. No, it's not like that, right? It's each soul is individual. We cannot say that when the mother has a baby in her body, her soul has split into two. No, it's just that another soul has come into her body and entered into the baby's body. So that's the understanding. And it's insoluble. That means it doesn't mix, it doesn't merge into one. So it's not that everything joins and merges to become one single soul in the end, right? It's not like that. So that's the misunderstanding, right? And it can be neither burned nor dried. So again, it's not affected by matter. He is everlasting, nitya, sarva, nitya sarva, everlasting, present everywhere. Present everywhere means, it doesn't mean that we are in everywhere at the same time. It means that there are many souls everywhere. So in every corner of the universe, there are souls. So it's just that whether or not we can see or we cannot see. Even in the fire, there are living entities, right? For example, science has recently discovered also that there are certain types of germs which live even within fire. Even in volcano, even in lava, there are these kind of living entities. So it's just that they have a different type of body. Like, for example, we see in the depths of the sea, 20,000 feet underwater, the pressure is so strong that even a submarine can break into two, even at 10,000 feet underwater. So imagine what will happen to us. But still, there are wondrous creatures living at the bottom of the seabed. And it's so therefore there are souls in every single area of this universe. They are immovable and eternally the same. So what does all this mean for us? What does that mean for us? So how do we understand this application? So basically, Krishna is delineating the law of reincarnation. This is a very important concept which is there in all Eastern religions. You will find in Buddhism also, because Buddhism basically comes from Hinduism. So the law of reincarnation is there, right? It's called the samsara cycle, the cycle of samsara. Again and again, life, death, life, death, life, death, life, death, taking various bodies. So this is also mentioned in the Shiva Purana. Actually, it's mentioned in many, many places, but I'm mentioning Shiva Purana. Why? Because it's quite popular. You will find it recited in many funerals, Hindu funerals. You know, they will say, you'll become how the soul migrates from the worm, and then from the worm it puluai, apron puchai, apron pambai, they will say like that. So it takes different bodies. The soul doesn't change, it's the same, but it takes various species of life. It goes through various species of life, and it's described that the last animal species is the cow. After the cow, then the soul enters into a human body. So like that, it goes through the different. So this is called evolution of the consciousness, not the Darwin's evolution. That's evolution of the body. So this is evolution of consciousness. And this is the law of reincarnation. Now, actually, every religion has this. Even in Christianity, in the early Christian times, there were 50 gospels being circulated. And few of these gospels was talking about the law of reincarnation. But in the modern Bible, only 4 out of 50 gospels came into the Bible. And who selected them? Why they selected some gospels and threw away other gospels? So that's a very interesting topic to discuss, but not today. So anyway, this reincarnation is also there all over, everywhere. So it gives rise to very interesting questions, right? Probably some of you may have already thought of some of these interesting questions. So let's see what kind of questions. If it's true that we are going through different cycles of life, right? We may want to know why this is happening. Why is the soul forced to go through different births? Interesting point. Another interesting question is, what determines the next birth? Right? What are the factors? How do I know what will be the next birth? Okay, if I'm a human, right? What will decide my next birth after this? Interesting question also. Then you might want to ask, can I control the destination of my next birth? Right? If I can understand what are the factors that affect my next destination, is it possible for me to control the next destination? Can I be what I want to be in my next life? So that's another interesting question. And that would lead to an even more important question. How do I stop this? Right? One thing is to know why this is happening, but can I stop this cycle of birth and death, samsara? And even more important question after that is, once I stop it, what happens to me after that? Where do I go? So the answers are all there. So it's in the Bhagavad Gita in the next chapters. So we will discuss this. Just bear with us for the next 18 days. We promise you answers for all of these questions. So to help us to understand the context in our life, how to affect this in our life, right? So I'm going to give you a simple analogy or a simple story. Now, a person bought a nice parrot. This old lady here, she bought a nice parrot. And then, the parrot will fly away, right? So naturally, she bought a cage. And she thought, oh, this parrot is so beautiful. Let me get a beautiful cage for this parrot. So a very nice cage, right? And then this cage was more expensive than the parrot. It was made out of gold plated cage and all that. So as she kept the parrot for a week, she was always busy wiping the cage, because the parrot will sometimes pass stool and urine and dirty the cage. So she was very diligent to clean the cage. And she was an old lady. Sometimes when very old people, they sometimes forget things. So, but one thing she didn't forget was to clean the cage, because she was that type of person. She liked shiny things to be kept clean and bright. But after 1 week, the parrot died. So what happened to the parrot? Everybody asked, what happened to the parrot? Why did the parrot die? And then the lady thought and thought, and then some people came and looked also. And then they said, what did you give this parrot to eat? And then the lady thought, oh my God, I forgot to feed the parrot. I didn't give anything to the parrot. So that's the reason the parrot died. So she was very careful to clean the cage, but she didn't really give food to the parrot. So this is similarly, from this we can try to understand the point of view that I'm trying to bring here. So the parrot is like the soul, and the cage is like the body. So in modern days, nowadays, majority of the population in the world, we are very, very, very busy to clean the cage, but we hardly feed the parrot, if you understand what I'm saying. So most of the time, we are very bodily conscious. We make sure that our body is well taken care of. We ensure that we are given the right, education, or the right capabilities, or the right type of resources, so that we ensure that our body is well maintained. And not only well maintained, it is shiny, it is attractive, it is able to, but we many times forget to feed the soul, because we are not actually the body, we are not the cage. We forget that we are actually the soul. So what is food for the soul? Another interesting question. So that is an application we can understand. We will discuss this towards the end of this session today. So in the material viewpoint, so this is what we can understand as material viewpoint and spiritual viewpoint. So material viewpoint is like the body conscious about matter, conscious about the body. So the understanding of this kind of viewpoint is, number one, we are the body and we are made up of matter. So this is like how the scientists would want to have us believe, right? So they say we are the body. And when this happens, when we think like this, right, we are nothing more than just chemical bundles. So, and then the third point is, everything is finished at the time of death. Now, this is a very dangerous philosophy. You probably might have heard of this kind of philosophy. Nowadays, in those days, it was called hedonism. All right, if you can Google it up, you'll find what hedonism is all about, or materialistic view. Nowadays, it has a new name. Actually, this hedonism was there even during the Roman times. It was there even during Vedic times. If you see the Roman people, they practiced hedonistic culture. And if you see, and now they call it YOLO, YOLO. What does YOLO mean? You live only once. That's what YOLO means. So that means enjoy. Do whatever you want, anything you want. Doesn't matter what happens, because you live only once. There is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no afterlife. This is your one life. Do whatever you want and get whatever you want in any means necessary. To hell with future generations. Don't care about the earth. Don't care about environment. To only care about myself, because we live only once. So this is what majority of the people in the world are having, this kind of viewpoint. So this is not supported by the Bhagavad Gita. And obviously, even if we think carefully, there are philosophers and even scientists who don't support this. So what's the spiritual viewpoint? Spiritual viewpoint is we are not the material body of flesh and bones, right? We are spirit soul encaged in this material body, just like the parrot caught within the cage. The body is like the cage, keeping us here. We do not die. We do not die because we are Atma when material body stops to function. So that's the spiritual viewpoint and the understanding for today, what we have discussed. So now that we know we are the soul, right? So what do we eat? How do we act? How do we act now that we know that we are the soul, that we are eternal, that the body doesn't die? So what should we do? What are the right things to do? What are the wrong things to do? So this is the beginning of human life. The acharyas say this is the beginning. A human being who doesn't think like this, the acharyas and the Vedas also say, Pasubir Samanam. We are just like animals, because we don't understand that only in this human life we have the capability to think these kind of questions. Because no, of course, the animals cannot think like this, isn't it? So how do we act? What do we do? So let's see. So Krishna gives some preview. He gives a preview of how we should act. Before this verse, he says, previous verse, he will say, keep all abominable activities far away and only do pious activities. So that is one thing he says, but he goes further. Krishna says, Karmani eva dika. This is another very famous verse. Not so much famous in Malaysia, but if you go to India, everybody will know this verse and they misquote it all the time. So Karmani is called the verse of action. Karmani eva dikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bhur ma te sango asti akarmani. So the translation is, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty. So how should we act? So Krishna is telling we should act our prescribed duty. Now this prescribed duty is based on the 4 divisions of human society and the 4 ashrams of human society. What are these 4 divisions? We will talk in detail about these 4 divisions in the level 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Not now. Later on, if you all go on to level 2, we can talk about this in detail. But anyway, in short, it's basically Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, the 4 classes of human society. In a very poorly understood manner, it's called the caste system. So the caste system is actually what do you call perverted version of the actual Varnashrama. The actual name is called Varnashrama Dharma. So it's actually a perversion, because nowadays the caste system is determined based on one's birth alone. So that is abominable, that is rejected. Actually, the system is based on 2 things. Birth is just one initial thing. But more important than birth, even if the birth was not there, the more important criteria is guna or nature. Now, why I'm saying this, in human society, no matter whether we accept this caste system or don't accept this caste system, there will always be 4 types of people, isn't it? We will talk about this in detail in the second level. But in short, there will always be the intelligent class of society who are peaceful, who are calm. Now, in modern society, who are these type of people? Usually they are the philosophers or the scientists or the priests or those who are those who go into charity, philanthropic activities. So these are and the more intelligent society, right? And then there will always be more those type of people who are into management. So one who's very good at managing, one who's always good at protection and management. So there are that type of people also. The managers, right? So we have the visionary, we have the managers, and then we also have those who are called the third class, which is like those who are the executors, right? So we have we have the visionary, the managers, and the executors. Executors are like the Vaishyas. So we need people. There are always classes of people who will be doing the nourishment and the support. So these activities come under Vaishya category. And then finally, there will be the Shudra category, which is basically those who are serving. So those who are serving the other three classes to ensure that everything goes smoothly. So it's like the head, like a body. In a body, we've got the head. Without the intelligent brain, what's the point of the arm? No matter how powerful your arm may be, right? So the arm is like the Kshatriya or the managers. We need the arm to execute, right? To actually plan, to manage, right? And the stomach is like the Vaishya. In order for the arm to function and for the brain to work, we need food. So nourishment and support must come. And at the same time, you need legs also, isn't it? To walk, to get from one place to another, and to bring you to where you need support and the necessary support and the necessary transportation. So that is basically, so you cannot say that the leg is unimportant. So let me just cut off the leg. Can we say like that? We cannot, isn't it? So society is the same also. We cannot only have leaders. We also need followers. Leaders and followers in society. Otherwise, it will be chaos everywhere. So all these four components are there. So anyway, that is Varnashram. So I'm a bit, I digressed a bit. So let us get back to the main topics. So Krishna is saying, you are a Kshatriya. You are one of the warriors. You're a warrior class. So you have a right to perform your prescribed duty. So that should never be given up. If you are a Kshatriya, you should perform your duty. Because if a Kshatriya doesn't perform his duty, then everything goes collapse. The society will collapse, right? Who will enforce order? Who will enforce? Imagine there is no police or army within the country. There will be chaos, right? So in the same way, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty. Because if you don't perform your prescribed duty, it is sin. But you are not entitled to the fruits of action. So this is the key here. So Krishna is actually telling Arjuna the art of living or the art of working. So don't worry, we will discuss this in detail in chapters 3 and chapters 5. So that time we will talk about the art of working. So for now, just a preview. You are not entitled to the fruits of action. That means we work, we do our duty, but we should not be interested in the result. It should be something done for the sake of duty, right? Never consider yourself the cause of the result. Even though we try our best, we work very, very well, but we should not think we are the cause of that result. And never be attached to not doing your duty. So this is one of the key phrases. It's basically the art of living or the art of working. It will be discussed in detail in chapter 3 and also in chapter 5. We'll come back to that. So still Sankhya, this is verses 231 to 237. We talked about karma kanda, which is basically activities. And now Krishna starts to hint at something even higher. He begins to, this is actually karma yoga. In 247, this verse is describing yoga. He introduces yoga into the picture. So this is, what is yoga? We will talk about that next week, right? Because that's when we enter into the real Bhagavad Gita. This is a summary. This is also the real Bhagavad Gita, but this is basically preview. From chapter 3 onwards, we will go into each topic in detail. So Krishna hints at something even higher. Remember the questions about reincarnation? What happens? How can we stop this cycle of birth and death? Where do we go if we stop it? So all these answers Krishna will give towards the end. So now this is the higher point he's talking about in verse 265. He's talking about the perfect person, Sthita Prajna, one who has perfected, who has understood perfectly the spiritual conclusions of life, right? Arjuna wanted to know, how is he? Who is he? What does he do? How does he sit? How does he walk? So then Krishna tells, for one thus satisfied, basically one who has attained perfection, right? The threefold miseries of material existence no longer exist. There is no longer misery for that person. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So basically, he's giving a preview to Arjuna just to increase his curiosity. And because of this, Arjuna will ask further questions. You will see in chapter 3, Arjuna will ask further questions. He wants to know deeper. He wants to be like this person. So therefore, Krishna is purposely dropping hints for Arjuna to understand. So now I'm going to tell a story towards the end. This is the end already. So of chapter 2, we covered the Sthita Prajna, the perfect person, but not so much in detail because there are many verses, 72 verses. We will go into this more in all the other topics, right? Other chapters. So the Prayojana means the end, the goal, the final conclusion of this chapter 2 is described by this story. So now I'm going to tell you the story of that perfect person. So this perfect person, there are many, many examples like that in the scripture. Now this story comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it tells the story of Maharaja Ambarish, or Ambarish Maharaj. So this Ambarish Maharaj was a great king and a very, very pious king. He's called a Raja Rishi. Raja Rishi means a pious king. Extremely pious. He has understood the full conclusions of scripture. He has learned spiritual knowledge perfectly. And though he is very advanced in his spiritual life, very advanced in his knowledge, you can see here that he is still doing his duty. He's still a king and he's still performing his activities. So that might think, oh, I thought that a perfect person means one must be a muni or a sage. Why is he a king? How can a king be a perfect person? So in this picture, you can see how there is a sage, a muni. In fact, this is a muni or a sage, and he is giving his obeisances and touching the feet of this Ambarish. So one might think, hey, what a unique situation. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the king who will, this is called obeisances or, dandavats. So usually it's the king who will worship the sage or the muni. But here is the opposite. So how did this happen? Now, let me tell the story. So this king, he was very wonderful. What he did, he used his entire body and Atma to serve the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So what he was doing, he used his legs, for example, to always walk to the temple, to go around the temple, to go around the deities. He used his arms to always perform many, many seva personally for the Supreme Lord, for the worship. And he used his body to hug, to embrace great, great devotees, to embrace saintly people. And he used his head to dandavat, to put his head on the feet of saintly people. So in this way, he used his entire body, and he used his eyes to see the deity of the Lord. He used his ears to hear about the pastimes, about spiritual knowledge. And he used his mouth to always chant the holy names of the Lord, to always chant and sing the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So in this way, he used his entire body, and he was also a very surrendered soul. He gave his body and his soul always dedicated to the service of the Supreme Lord. So this was such a saintly king called Ambarish Maharaj. Now one day, this Ambarish Maharaj was observing a very special fast. This fast is called the Ekadashi Brata. Now, there are 14 days in the phases of the moon, right? From Amavasya to Purnima, and then from Purnima to Amavasya, there are 14 phases, right? So each of these day or tidi is like, we have Pratipad, we have Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, Sashti, Saptami, Ashtami, Navami, Dashami. Like that, it goes on up to Paurnami, correct? And then it goes back to the days again. So like that, the 11th day after Dashami is Ekadashi. And then after Ekadashi is Dwadashi, then Chaturdashi. So Ekadashi is a very special day. It is actually the day dedicated to Hari, or to the Supreme Lord Krishna, or to Vishnu. So on this day, devotees of the Lord, they actually follow a fast. And this fast means, okay, the details of the fast, I won't go to that. But he wasn't eating anything. There are different levels of following the fast. And Ambarish Maharaj was following the topmost level. He will not eat anything at all, or even drink anything at all, from sunrise until the next morning sunrise. So, and he won't sleep also throughout the night. So this is, like in Vaikuntha Ekadasi, we do that. But actually, in every Ekadasi, one should do that. So this is what Ambarish Maharaj was. He was observing this Ekadashi Brata. And when he was just about to break fast on the next day, on Dwadashi, on the next day, he was just about to break his fast on the proper time, the current time. The proper time to break fast is also given on the next day, according to the calendar, right? So when that happened, a sadhu came, a Muni. Now this Muni is none other than Durvasha Muni. So Durvasha Muni is very famous. He comes in many, many Puranas and in many, many stories. But this Durvasha Muni is very famous to be extremely powerful, but he's also very hot-tempered, a little. So that's his nature, so Muni. So he was visiting this Ambarish Maharaj, and Ambarish Maharaj immediately received this Durvasha Muni very nicely. He welcomed him. Please have a seat. Please have something. But it's Ekadashi. Let's break fast together. And then this Durvasha Muni said, he was very happy. Okay, I will break fast with you, but let me first go and take my bath, because I just traveled and I should take a bath. So then he went to take his bath, but unfortunately he was quite some time while he was taking his bath, and the time to break fast was already passing. It was about to pass. Now, according to the rules of this vrata, if you must break fast within that period of time. So if it crosses, that means your phalan, or the fruit of that fast, is lost. So then Maharishi Ambarish was thinking, what to do? The time is passing already. I need to break fast, but I cannot eat without offering the food to Durvasa Muni first. That's the etiquette when a guest comes. So he asked his guru, he asked his priests, what should I do? Then they told him, according to the scripture, if you drink water, it is considered breaking fast, but at the same time, it's also not considered eating. So in this way, you can satisfy both. So then Maharaj Ambarish said, okay, you're right. So then he took a glass of water and he was about to put the water in his mouth. Before even the water dropped into the mouth, at that time, Durvasa Muni was coming for finished his bathing, and he was walking. And when he saw Ambarish Maharaj was about to drink water, and that too right in front of him, Ambarish Maharaj didn't know that Durvasa Muni was right in front of him. He was drinking, and when Durvasa Muni saw this, he just lost it. He just lost his temper, and he thought, "Oi, this is supposed to be a saintly king, and you are so obviously breaking the principles of etiquette of treating a guest. You are drinking water without offering it to your guest first." So he became very focused on that one small principle of Artha Shastra, right? Dharma Shastra, very small principle. And he due to his anger, he was not able to understand higher principles. So he was feeding into that anger, and he became so angry, he cursed Ambarish Maharaj. You will die because of this offense. And what did he do? He plucked a knot of hair from his head and he threw it into the ground, and then he uttered a prayer, boom, like that. He uttered a mantra, and he imbibed that mantra into that knot of hair, and immediately that knot of hair became a demon, a great fiery demon. You can see here the great fiery demon. And Ambarish and Durvasa said, go and kill this king. And then this great fiery demon roaring, it came towards Ambarish Maharaj. But Ambarish Maharaj was very calm. He was completely, remember I mentioned, he was Atma Nivedana, completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord's mercy. So he was thinking, let it be so. And then he was just putting his palms together, and he was waiting for death to come. But what happened when he opened his eyes, death didn't come. Instead, an extremely effulgent light was shining. And what happened was the Sudarshan Chakra, the weapon of Vishnu, was there in front on top of Ambarish Maharaj's head. And it was coming and striking this demon, this fiery demon. And the demon, though the demon was made of fire, and Sudarshan Chakra is also fiery and shining very brightly, but this demon was completely destroyed by this Sudarshan Chakra. And not only it was destroyed, the Sudarshan Chakra started to go after Durvasa Muni. And when that happened, Durvasa Muni's eyes became wide with fear. Sudarshan Chakra, the foremost weapon in the entire creation. So I cannot handle this. And he started to run. Now, Durvasa Muni also was not an ordinary person. You can see, right? Just by throwing his hair down, he created a demon. Okay, none of us can do that, right? So anyway, he was not an ordinary personality. He can actually, by his mystic power, he can go to various planets in the universe. From the lowest planetary system, he can go all the way to the higher planetary system. He can even go beyond the material planets. So he ran and he ran. He can see here, the Sudarshan Chakra is chasing Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni first went all the way to the bottom of the ocean. He thought the ocean is water, so Sudarshan Chakra will not follow. But Sudarshan Chakra came after him even in the water. And then Durvasa Muni ran to the sky. And then he went to outer space. And still it followed. Then he went to Patala Loka, the lower planetary system. Still it came. Then he went to Indra Loka. Still it came. Then he went to even higher planetary systems. And eventually he went to the topmost material planetary system called Satya Loka or Brahma Loka. And he went to fall at Brahma and said, Brahmadev, please do something. And then Brahma said, I'm sorry, Durvasa Muni, though you are my son, I cannot do anything for you. This is Sudarshan Chakra, it's beyond me. So then Durvasa Muni, he ran and he went to even higher than Brahma Loka. He went to Kailash. Kailash is the abode of Lord Shiva. It is beyond the material world. But even there, Lord Shiva said, I'm sorry, Durvasa Muni, though you are my brother, they are brothers. But I am not able to save you. So please go, and there is only one place you can go. You should go to the master of this weapon. So this story is narrated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Durvasa Muni ran and went to Vaikuntha Loka. Vaikuntha is where Lord Vishnu is sitting, lying on the Adisesh, and Lakshmi Devi is also there. And he fell at the feet of Vishnu and he said, oh Vishnu, please save me from this Sudarshan Chakra. And to his great shock, Lord Vishnu said, I cannot save you, Durvasa Muni. And then Durvasa said, what do you mean you cannot save me? This is your weapon. And Durvasa said, though it is my weapon, don't you know, Durvasa, that I am always I am serving my own devotees. I am always at the pleasure of my devotees. My devotees are with me and I am always with them. So this Sudarshan Chakra, if you have offended my devotee, even I cannot retract this Sudarshan Chakra from even though I'm the master of the Sudarshan Chakra. So only one person can save you. That pure devotee of mine, only he can save you. So go back to Ambarish Maharaj and ask his forgiveness. Then Durvasa Muni finally came to Ambarish Maharaj. Now it seems that the Bhagavatam narrates that 1 year on earth has passed. And it seems Ambarish Maharaj, he kept the fast. He kept on fasting until that he drank the water, but he only drank water and he fasted throughout that entire year. This is during those times, people could do it. And he was waiting for a sign from Lord Vishnu. And then finally Durvasha Muni came and he fell on the feet of, after running for 1 year, you can imagine how the situation might be. And he fell on the feet of Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj immediately said, "Hey, Durvasha Muni, don't do this. You are a Brahmana. I should be serving you." But Durvasha Muni said, "No, Ambarish Maharaj, in my anger and in my mistake, I have actually caused a grievous offense at your lotus feet. Please forgive me. I did not understand how great the Vaishnavas are in the eyes of Lord Vishnu. So please save me. Please forgive me." But the Vaishnavas are always very merciful, and Ambarish Maharaj very merciful. So therefore, he says, "There's nothing to forgive. Please come." And as soon as that happened, the Sudarshan Chakra disappeared in a burst of flowers. So all these flowers dropped on Ambarish Maharaj. And in this way, this is the pastime of how it is shown that one who has attained this Sthita Prajna level, one who has understood perfectly this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, like how it is shown in Ambarish Maharaj's character, he is actually beyond the three miseries. Nothing in this universe can harm this person, and he is not in any kind of misery, and he lives for the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord is with him at all time. So that is just a hint in this chapter 2. We are talking about the hint about the perfect person. So we will talk more and more in later chapters to come. Okay, so in summary today, basically the takeaways for today is we heard about the indecisiveness of Arjuna, right? The last excuse Arjuna gave of indecisiveness to surrender to Krishna. How the soul changes bodies, right? The nature of the soul. The soul is eternal. The soul is immutable. The soul is cannot be affected by matter. It cannot be divided. It is insoluble, right? And all these things. Body is the covering like a dress. And then we heard about the characteristics of the soul I mentioned already. And then we heard about the art of action. This is, as I said, a summary of the entire other topics, right? We heard about the art of action, how we have the right to perform our duty, but we cannot expect any results from them. So we should be detached from the results. So this is the key. Later on, we will talk about it in detail. We should avoid all abominable activities by working for the Supreme Lord alone. And a satisfied person, or the topmost person, who is a Sthita Prajna, a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he is not affected by the threefold miseries. So yeah, this is a repeating of the same point. So if you remember, we talked about the cage and the parrot, right? So there is food for the body, just like how we are eating food for the body. If you remember, the parrot died because there was no food given. So the soul also has food. So there is also food for the soul. And what is food for the soul? It is basically sacrifice, right? Yajna. And in Bhagavad Gita, verse 10:25, Krishna says, of all sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names. So he's talking about the topmost sacrifice. So this chanting of the holy name using basically the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the ultimate method in which we can give food for the soul. So with that, we will end today, right? So as I mentioned yesterday also, you can make this order if you don't already have a Bhagavad Gita, or if you'd like to get these chanting beads, this Japa Mala, by which we can chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So you can make this order. I already mentioned this. Please remember there's the quiz. I saw today only 16 of you submitted the quiz. So for those of you who have not submitted, please try to every day. We humbly request you to submit the quiz by 12 noon on the next day latest. This is for us to look at your feedback and everything so that we can address it in the class, right? But for those of you who did not submit the quiz is open still, right? We didn't close the quiz, so you can still submit the quiz 1 for yesterday's class. It's important for you to submit the quiz because then only we will be able to recognize your attendance for this course and we can issue you the certificate. Now, the certificate may not be so important, but it's nice that we can recognize you during the graduation ceremony. So there will be a ceremony at the end, towards the end of the course. And at that time, we will mention all your names. So if you submit the quiz, then your names will also be recorded. So I humbly request you to submit the quiz. I will put the quiz in the WhatsApp after this. Okay, so now we are done. So any questions from anybody, please?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Prabhu, can I know, just now you mentioned about threefold miseries. What is this threefold miseries?
Thank you for the question. So, Mataji, you are very attentive. So, the threefold misery, I will talk about it also in detail. But since you asked, basically it's Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Atmika. Adi Daivika means Adi Daivika. Adi Daivika means Adi Daivika Klesha. Klesha means misery. So misery is due to devas. For example, according to our karma, we have got a certain family, we have got a certain situation, we are in a certain country. So things like disease, things like natural, like earthquakes, that kind of thing, or jobs, or that kind of economical situation. These are basically Adi Daivika, natural disasters and diseases and all that. So these are miseries which come across us, right? Famine, drought, no rain. Nowadays, very, very hot season, isn't it? Very, very hot. So like that, this is Adi Daivika. And then there is Adi Bhautika. Adi Bhautika means miseries caused by other living entities. So for example, we have people who hurt our feelings, people who say things to us, people who exist simply to create our problems for us, right? And then we have even mosquitoes. They are there. That is also Adi Bhautika, living entities that cause problems for us. And the greatest of all these problems is the last one, which is called Adi Atmika. Adi Atmika means miseries caused due to our own mind. Our own mind. I'm sure you must have come across situations, or even we would have gone through situations where everything is fine, or even something may not be so bad, but our mind is causing us so much of trauma, psychological trauma and stress. I've seen people where situations are not so bad, but still, they will tell themselves, it's horrible. They are in a very bad trauma. So the Adi Atmika, the Acharyas say, is actually the greatest misery. If one has conquered his mind, actually there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita later on in chapters. Krishna says, one who conquers the mind actually can attain very easily the higher destinations. So the mind can be one's greatest enemy or one's greatest friend. Krishna says that verse is there in the Bhagavad Gita. So these are the three miseries, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, can I know which verse is that? What is the verse is coming from which quotation? 2.1?
You're talking about the mind.
Adi David,
It's not in this chapter. Sorry, it's not in this chapter, but I can find it for you. I'll share it for you in the WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody else? So I'm just looking at the participant list. I noticed there is a Dr. Krishnamurti Appala Naidu. So we have a important personality. Welcome, sir. I hope you found this course suitable, and thank you for coming for this program.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So you can give your
Learned a lot.
feedback. Thank you. Thank you for that. So if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, Hare
Yes.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hmm.
I have one question. In the questionnaire, the quiz that you gave us, there was
Yes.
a second question which is a bit confusing. Second question, it says, maybe probably it says, the following are the reason why Arjuna refused to fight, except. But I feel that the answer is a bit confusing. Why do you say that he did not want to become a king?
He didn't.
Then
Okay. All right.
the
What was the
answer
correct
to this,
answer?
what is the answer for this question actually?
Okay, let me check. Let me check the quiz link and see. Then I can tell you.
The answer is he don't want to become a king. That's the answer.
Okay, because I didn't prepare these questions. Let me just check and see.
Why he didn't want to become that? He already said that he only needs a small gramam that day you said, yesterday you said. And then he didn't want to become a king,
Okay,
right?
okay. All right. Okay, I see the question. The following are the reasons that Arjuna refused to fight, except, okay, number one, compassion. I'm talking about the 6 reasons. Arjuna didn't want to give a fight, right? So the first, you remember, says D? So the first reason was compassion. So compassion was the reason. So that's not the answer because the question is except. And then second reason he gave was says D, E, no enjoyment. So no reason to enjoy the kingdom. So that was also the reason he gave. So that cannot be the answer. And then the third reason he gave was sin. He believed he will acquire sinful reactions. So that cannot be the answer also. So what other reason did he give? He gave destruction of dynasty. And then he also talked about indecision. Now the last question, the last answer, he did not want to become a king. Actually, you're right. It's not a very well written question. It's quite similar to the enjoying the kingdom, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Yes, you're right, Mataji. So I will give the feedback to the admin people. So they need to revamp some of the questions. Anyway, thank you for pointing that out, Mataji. You're right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think most of us got that question wrong.
The answer is a bit confusing between the second answer and the fifth answer.
Yes.
It is like contradicting each other.
Yes, you're right, Mataji. You're absolutely right. I will try to address this. In the future, I will see if I can make, anyway, we need to revamp some of these questions. Okay, there was one question here. Prabhu, yesterday you mentioned that most religion like Christianity and Islam having only one scriptures, but we have many scriptures. Don't you feel that put us into vast knowledge and confusion? Actually, the reason for that is the Vedic scriptures are meant for all types of people in the world. We have various types of people. Some people, not everybody is able to do one kind of activity. So the Vedic scriptures, it gives pathways for different people. Okay, some people are in a lower level. Okay, you do this, and then in this way, in your next life, you'll get a better life, and then you are able to better understand, and then you can progress in your spiritual life. So like that, for different ranks of society, different types of methods are given. But we will talk about this. It's interesting you mentioned this, and also yesterday somebody also mentioned about Shiva Purana and all that. So probably I need to address this. I was waiting to keep this for level 2, but since you all are asking, I need to explain to you why so many scriptures, why so many God in this world, right? So I will address this on one of the days. Just hold on to that question. I will give a very nice answer to that. Don't worry. Another reason is also the Vedas actually talk about many things. So, and the key to understanding the progression is also given in the Vedas. So that's why in Kali Yuga, especially in Kali Yuga, we have no time to go through all these different scriptures. So that's why two very important scriptures are given: the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses. Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. But it's very beautiful. Bhagavad Gita is song of God. Srimad Bhagavatam is all about God. So if we have heard the message of God, but if you are interested to know more about God, about who is God, what does he do, how does he behave with his devotees, what are the beautiful pastimes that he does, then we read the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these two is enough for this human society. So, and most importantly, we start from the Bhagavad Gita. So what I will do is on one of the days, okay, the idea here is, it's supposed to be 18 days course. We will do 6 days in a week. Like on Thursdays, I need to take a break, not because of anything. We will not have class on Thursdays. Why? Because I have to give another class to a level 2 group on Thursdays. That happens once a week and I cannot cancel that. And it happens in the same time also. So on Thursdays, we will not have class. And we will also, on Sunday, we will do special topics. We will do something different. We will do something outside Bhagavad Gita. And that's where I will address this question, Mataji. I will talk first about the different scriptures. So I hope that's okay with everybody, right? Okay, so I've recorded the class. Thankfully, I remembered. So without taking does anybody have any other questions? If you feel there's not enough time, you can also type your questions in your WhatsApp. Happy to answer them. And we can also discuss where we have the time.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Janani
Hare-
Mataji.
Are you allowed to go into your second level Thursday classes? No?
It's better not, because I will, I will basically go on something higher. And I'm addressing some point which I think it's because I'm going to go to second level with all of you also. First we go through the 18 days, and after that we will go to the next level and we will talk about the details. Maybe you can
Okay,
WhatsApp
thank
me
you.
personally, Mataji, if you're, I don't know, Mataji, are you already I mean, you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita and all this already?
I'm still new.
Okay. Then I think in order to not get confused, because I'll be using certain Sanskrit terms, I'll be speaking in a certain way where, like for example, Adi Devika, Adi Bhautika, all this is expected for you to already know when we go to the second level. So probably it's best to go level by level, Mataji. But your enthusiasm is very encouraging. I'm very encouraged by all your enthusiasm. So keep it going. Thanks.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions before we close? Okay.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Thank you very much. So then we will end this session today. We will see you all again tomorrow. I will post the quiz shortly. I will also put the PDF in the WhatsApp for all of you to look at if you like. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and see you all tomorrow. Hare
See you
Krishna.
tomorrow.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Prabhu.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Srila Prabhupada ki